Why isn't my daughter human enough for people to care? Why isn't my daughter woman enough for her to have a body and for her to have a choice?
A D&E procedure is a blind abortion, so picture yourself introducing this and grabbing anything you can blindly and pull, and I do mean hard, and out pops a leg about that big, which you put down on the table.
One in the shower where I had to stand there and bleed out to death, it felt like. And my boyfriend at the time is in the bedroom crying because he begged me not to do it. And he's crying.
A woman doesn't ever really want to kill her child. A doctor doesn't ever want to kill a baby. But we are deceived to think that we could do it. And it's only through the clarity of God's point of view that we can be set free.
Today we are going to look at these doctors' confessions of abortions, how they performed abortions, how it affected their lives, and even you can see that what they call abortion is not really abortion. The Bible says that I knew you before I formed you in your mother's womb, before you were born. So that means that God knows you're a person even before you were born.
That's right, baby. God sees you as a person, not a clump of cells, or you're a vessel. You were made in God's image. We're all made in God's image. And while he's in that womb, he's growing into a little boy, a little girl. And one day he's going to be ready to come out of that womb. But you see him as a clump of cells, so you think, I ain't nothing to kill this baby. That baby's got a life.
What kind of abortion did you have, Dr. Altman?
D&C with suction. So a D&E, or as it's also called and is more descriptive, a dismemberment abortion. During that, usually you have to dilate the cervix ahead of time, usually the day before, with some laminaria, something that will expand the cervix. And then you go in with a suction tube to remove the fluid and bring the baby down lower into the uterine cavity. And the cervix is smaller than the baby, so the baby will be held back, and as you pull, you can pull off an arm or a leg. And once you've gotten all the arms and legs, then you try to go back. And I always tried to get the head next, because if you got the thorax and pelvis and just left the head, you have this little round ball that's trying to get away from you. So I would try to get the head, and white brains leak out, and then you know you've gotten it. And
so she's got an arm, she's got a leg, now she's got the head out. Everybody thinks there's nothing to it, but they got to get all these body parts out, because that's still a baby.
That's a person.
So finally, they squish his head to get the head out. Not what comes this white pus. That would have been his brains.
That is very wrong. To me, there is nothing like a fetus. They're like cells. That is truly a person that they are really pulling out. You can tell how uncomfortable it is to explain that. If you thought that was worse, listen to this doctor's explanation.
Your patient today is 17 years old. She's 22 weeks pregnant. Her baby is the length of your hand plus a couple of inches. You walk into that operating room scrubbed and gowned, and after removing laminaria, you introduce a suction catheter into the uterus. This is a 14 French suction catheter. If she were 12 weeks pregnant or less, basically the width of your hand or smaller, you could basically do the entire procedure with this. But babies this big don't fit through catheters this size. After suctioning the amniotic fluid out from around the baby, you introduce an instrument called a Sofer clamp. It's about 13 inches long. It's made of stainless steel. A D&E procedure is a blind abortion, so picture yourself introducing this and grabbing anything you can blindly and pull, and I do mean hard, and out pops a leg about that big, which you put down on the table next to you. Reach in again, pull out an arm about the same length, which you put down on the table next to you. And use this instrument again and again to tear out the spine, the intestines, the heart and lungs. Head on the baby that size is about the size of a large plum. Can't see it, but you pretty good idea you've got it if you've got your instrument around something and your fingers are spread about as far as they go. You know you did it right if you crush down on the instrument and white material runs out of the cervix. That was the baby's brains. Then you could pull out skull pieces. And you have a day like I had a lot of times, sometimes a little face comes back and stares back at you. Congratulations, you just successfully performed a second trimester D&E abortion. You just affirmed her right to choose.
So explain to me this. Why is this not murder? If some crazy man comes in with a gun, kills his girlfriend, shoots her, bam, 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 and he kills the wife, the girlfriend and the baby, why is it considered a double homicide? Why ain't it homicide now?
This is disgusting. Just hearing this, I don't know, it makes me sick. Because that is pulling and making this child die. You have to hear that crash. You have to see the brain oozing out. I mean, it is just disgusting. And it should not be done. I don't know.
We killed our niece or nephew. Each one of these abortions has a vast consequence. My niece or nephew would have been in their 40s right now. My sister-in-law had one child at the time. That child was killed in a boating accident. We killed, which would have been her only surviving child. And that sister-in-law is childless now because of the abortion we performed on her. That should tell you a little bit about the capability and the depravity that we have within us, that we know it's spiritual, but yeah, I take responsibility for that, to be in that room and assist in the killing of a personal relative. Mm-hmm. And so it's a wake-up call that we are fighting an intense battle against a formidable enemy, but we still have to take personal responsibility at the same time.
So even this doctor calls it kill. He says we killed. And it's unfortunate the sister-in-law lost the other baby. And so she has no surviving child. And you can tell it is something that is an open wound, even to this doctor, what they did.
When I returned to do abortions after my baby was born, I did abortions throughout my pregnancy and with no regrets. But when I went back after my baby was born, I ran into 3 patients who changed my mind, and I could no longer kill babies just because they weren't wanted. The first one was a girl who I had personally done 3 abortions on. She was using abortion as birth control, and I went to the clinic manager and I said, I don't want to do this abortion. She said 3. I've done them. And she said, well, that's her right. You have no say, so you need to do that abortion. But at that point, I thought, no, this is wrong. And thankfully, for that girl, that was the beginning of the end for me. So I was thankful that, well, she couldn't have lied because she was in our records and I knew I had done them. But somehow for me, knowing that I had done 3 abortions on one woman, one girl, young girl, was unsettling.
So let's some of these testimonies of people who actually went through an abortion, how bad it felt and how bad they feel now.
I got pregnant at 17 and had an abortion using RU-486 drugs. And then 7 months later, I got pregnant again and had another abortion using RU-486 drugs.
Yes, I had multiple abortions, 5. I did the surgical abortion with the suctioning during first trimester. I think I experienced more despair having an abortion in a shower. Doing the surgical abortions where I was under some kind of sedation or what, not quite sure what it's called. And so in those moments, I was less conscious, not fully unconscious, but less conscious. But that one in the shower where I had to stand there and bleed out to death, it felt like. And my boyfriend at the time is in the bedroom crying because he begged me not to do it. And he's crying because it's too late at that point. And I remember forcing myself not to look down because I didn't want to see And when it was all over, I just forced myself not to look at the apps, not to research, not to Google the truth. And it wasn't until I went through a post-abortion program that part of the homework assignment was to read each week. And it was in that moment that I read that there was not a week acceptable, that there was not a day acceptable to take that life, to stop a life. And so that's when it really hit me that this is unacceptable.
Yeah.
You don't think us men don't hurt too? We may not have a uterus, but we hurt just as much. Just watch this man. Tell me what you think.
My question, I just wanted to say my daughter's name is Clementine. She was 5 months along when she was aborted in New Jersey. My daughter was healthy. I begged her mother not to go through with the abortion. For 5 months, we went back and forth. I don't hate my ex. I love her. And I'm working on forgiving her. She was confused. She was uncertain. And she had doubts. This was an option, and she took that option, and she regrets it now. Why do you think, and this is just a thought that just came into my head, why do you think that people dehumanize my Clementine? Why wasn't she human enough for people to help me mourn? Why wasn't she human enough for people to talk about? My mother was given birth to prematurely at 5 months. My daughter was 5 months. I didn't get to say goodbye to my daughter. I didn't know about the abortion until after it happened. I begged her not to do the appointment. She told me that she canceled it. My daughter was 5 months, and she was ripped apart. My daughter doesn't get a funeral. My daughter doesn't get respect. As my friend asked, medical testing on a healthy baby. Why? My girlfriend didn't pay for the abortion. The clinic did. How much money did they make off of my daughter's body? How many other babies did the doctor kill since she's been dead? This has been a month and 3 days. This happened March 12th and 13th. My daughter was conceived October 25th. She was supposed to be born July 20th. My daughter was a person. My daughter is an angel, and I pray for her every single day. I talk to her. I still feel like she's there. I feel like on July 20th, my daughter is going to be there. She doesn't get a funeral. I have her sonogram picture the first time I heard her heartbeat, and I bring this up to people and I say, well, she had a heartbeat. Wasn't she a person? And I'm being told she's a fetus, which, by the way, everybody, that's Latin for offspring. Okay, so I don't know why we're speaking Latin. I speak English. And my daughter not only matters, but I do not want my daughter to be forgotten. I want my daughter's story to be talked about. I want her to be remembered. Why isn't my daughter human enough for people to care? Why isn't my daughter woman enough for her to have a body and for her to have a choice? My daughter was going to be beautiful, but now I don't know where she is. And I'm just so confused. Why wasn't she enough? Why didn't she get a chance to live? This is an evil law that killed my daughter.
Why did you end your practice of doing abortions? I met my wife during my first year of training at Albany Medical Center. We got married about a year later and found that we had an infertility problem. Several years trying to adopt a child. We were blessed with adopting a little girl that we named Heather in August of 1978. As sometimes happens in those situations, my wife got pregnant the very next month, and we had 2 children 10 months apart. 2 months short of my daughter Heather's 6th birthday, she was killed in an auto accident and literally died in her arms in the back of an ambulance. Anyone who has children might think they have some idea of what that feels like, but unless you've been through it yourself, you have no idea whatsoever. And I don't remember exactly how long it was after my daughter died that I showed up at Albany Medical Center OR number 9 to perform my first second trimester D&E abortion, but I reached in, literally pulled out an arm or leg and got sick. For the first time in my life, I really looked. I really looked at that pile of body parts on the side of the table. And I didn't see her wonderful right to choose, and I didn't see all the money I just made. All I could see was somebody's son or daughter. And I stopped doing late-term abortions after that, and several months later stopped doing all abortions.
You know, my way out, and Jesus set me free. He found me. I went to this Christian music concert. Leon Patella was performing. This was 1986. It was 3 weeks before our baby daughter was to be born via repeat C-section. And I went to that concert. Halfway through that concert, Leon had a little intermission and he said, those of you out there that want things to be 100% right with God, stand up. I mean, you sound like a good deal to me. 100% right with God? Why not? And I stood up there, and it was the Holy Spirit that yanked me up, because I'm the type of guy, you know, I got to check things out first to see if it's appropriate for me to stand up. And I'm standing up, but now it's too embarrassing to sit down because that would draw more attention. But there are a few other people standing. And he prayed what I know now that was like a sinner's prayer, but I was raised in a church that didn't really preach the gospel or teach anything about what salvation was. So I didn't know anything happened. I just sat back down after the prayer was over and enjoyed the remainder of that concert. But even though I knew nothing about Jesus or his purpose, when I got home, I felt different. I knew something was changed in me. And so, you know, God always has a way of taking you through the progression. Some plant, some water, some prune. And there was a young man who was my roommate in medical school who happened to be coming to be a part of that delivery as the godfather. And he just happened to be the son of a Pentecostal preacher. And when I shared with him about how I went to this concert, he said, and how I feel different, he starts to cry. And he shared with me how he and his wife had been praying that my late wife and I come to Christ. So it wasn't through me learning that abortion was wrong in God's eyes. He saved me, but then everything else, God's light was shined on. And of course, what God tends to do, well, if you were in medicine or you were in abortion, God fixed all of my sin. I was going to hell long before I even knew what an abortion was. But what he said, well, since you had this experience in abortion, I'm going to take you now, and I'm going to train you, your late wife up. We're going to make you guys pro-life warriors. So it started with that walk with Christ and being transformed by the renewing of your mind, because in your mind that you were deceived to have these scales before your eyes. A woman doesn't ever really want to kill her child. A doctor doesn't ever want to kill a baby. But we are deceived to think that we could do it. And it's only through the clarity of God's point of view that we can be set free.
Now let's look at the book of Judges. We have this story of Samson. When the mother of Samson was going to conceive, this is what the angel said. Be careful, you must not drink wine or any other alcoholic drink. That is when she was pregnant. That means that you have a baby inside there, and those drinks can harm your baby. That's why God says, and told the mother not to drink them. So already God knows that that is a baby that is being formed there. We hope this video has opened your eyes and you know the truth. So make the right choices. Thank you for watching. Be blessed.